Welcome back, everyone. Today is day 7 in our Advent series, so I am going to put my number 7 star on my nativity scene, while you and your family put your number 7 star on your nativity scene. The sky is filling up with stars, isn't it? And today we have another story called Free at Last. And this is the story of Moses. And the story of Moses is from the book of Exodus in the Bible. Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac had a son named Jacob, and Jacob had a son named Joseph, who saved God's people from famine by bringing them to Egypt. When the famine was over, Joseph and his brothers didn't follow God out of Egypt. Neither did their children, or their children's children, or their children's children's children. And even though God's family was now bigger than ever, they were about to be in trouble because a new king began to rule in Egypt. The king was very mean to God's people. He made them his slaves. All day long they worked. They didn't get snack breaks, or time to play, or anything. God's people felt alone and crushed, so they cried out to God, "Where are you? We need you." God heard their cries. God saw their trouble, and God's heart was breaking over all of it, especially how God's people felt all alone. He would find a way to be with them again. God picked a man named Moses to rescue his people. Moses knew all about their slavery, but he had tried to rescue God's people once before, and it hadn't worked. So he had given up. Now he was out in the wilderness watching sheep instead. Until one day he walked by a bush. Not any old bush, mind you, but a bush that was on fire, but it didn't burn up. When Moses got closer, God started talking to him through the bush. "I know my people are suffering and alone," he said. "I hear their cries. I see their chains. Their slavery ends now." Moses thought that was good news, but he wasn't sure what he had to do with it. Then God said, "Moses, you're going to be the one to tell Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. You're going to say, 'Let my people go.'" Maybe after our devotion today, you can sing that special song with your families about Pharaoh and Moses letting the people go. Moses was scared. Pharaoh could hurt him, even kill him. God knew Moses was scared, so he gave him an important promise. "I'll be with you the whole time." So Moses told Pharaoh everything God had said. Pharaoh didn't want to go. He didn't want to let God's people go at first, but then God started sending Pharaoh horrible plagues. God turned the Nile River into blood, but Pharaoh didn't listen. So God sent more plagues. He made frogs cover the land. After that, he sent gnats to cover the frogs, and after that, sickness and horrible boils and huge hailstones and storms of locusts, a terrible darkness all day long, and still Pharaoh didn't listen. God used Moses to warn Pharaoh about the last plague. Let God's people go, or the firstborn son in every family will die. God also used Moses to warn God's people. Listen closely. Every family needs to take a lamb, kill it, and put its blood on your doorposts. That way, when God visits tonight, he'll see the blood and pass over your house. Sure enough, that night many people died, including Pharaoh's own son. Finally, Pharaoh told God's people, "You aren't my slaves anymore. Go." God's people were free at last for years to come, even when it was hard, even when they wandered in the wilderness, even when they weren't sure what was going to happen next. They remembered how God had saved them from slavery in Egypt. But as the years went on and on, people stopped remembering. They had plenty of reasons to remember, but they thought about other things instead. They thought about how strong they were now and how they didn't want to be in the wilderness anymore. They even started to miss Egypt. It led them back to the same old problem. Our poem today says, when they forgot their God, he seemed far away. So Moses and God's people began to hope and to pray. God, will you come back to stay? And I bet our block today will be Moses' burning bush. Join me tomorrow to see what our next story will be about.